Hi everybody, my name is Yang Safia and I'm an EALD lecturer here at OSMAT Sunway. Now, in this lecture, we'll be looking at Jesse Williams' BET speech. Now, a bit about Jesse Williams. If you're a fan of Grey's Anatomy, now he might be a familiar face, but essentially he's an actor with a strong activist background. And fun fact, he was an English teacher at some point before he became an actor. So yeah, I thought that was cool. Now let's move on. Now in his speech, it is important for us to understand the context of his speech. Now when he delivered this BET speech, essentially it was at a Black Entertainment Television Award. It's an annual event whereby BET, a Black-owned channel, a Black-focused channel, recognizes the talents within their community. So we've got what we see here is some of the sketch that artists perform at one point. Is a play from Hamilton. We see here Beyonce and Kendrick Lamar performing Freedom. I think that was back in 2016 maybe. And then we've got like an iconic performance by Drake. So if you're familiar with this artist, they have performed at BET at some point. So yeah. So when Jesse Williams delivered this speech, he is very much aware that he is speaking directly to the Black community. And if you want to look at the way he uses certain his language in the speech, one may argue that he used a language or a slang or a lingo that is familiar to the Black community. And we can argue that he is trying to, incite or empower Black community through a certain style of language, right? So for instance, if you are going to give a speech to a group of OSMAT students, you might, in order to get them to support you, you might want to use certain anecdotes or jokes or slang that are familiar to OSMAT students, just to show that sort of bond. So I hope when you read Jesse Williams' speech, you'll be able to identify certain of this slang or jokes. Now, in the next few slides, we'll be looking at different topics mentioned by Jesse. Okay. Right, first thing first, we have the topic of police brutality. I'm sure your teacher or I have, make references to explain what this actually is. But if you need a bit of refresher, police brutality is essentially an issue that is faced by Black people due to discrimination and stereotype. Just as the name suggests, based on stats, it is likely, if you're Black, you are likely to be harassed or brutalized by the police because of their implicit biasness. So what we see here is just like a 2012 data on how Black people compared to other races being treated by the police, right? So these are faces of innocent victims, all right, who died at the hands of the police because they were, mislabeled as criminals, or the police assume that, because they're Black, so therefore they must be guilty. So one of these people, like Rakia Boyd, Tamir Rice, right, Trayvon Martin, these are names that Jesse Williams actually mentioned in his speech. So we can argue that this is a form of allusion, right? This is an allusion to references, okay, to the victims. Right, moving on. So, because of police brutality, what happened, what was the outcome of this is a public backlash, alright, which eventually lead people to create this movement called Black Lives Matter. So essentially, regardless of your race, these are people who believe that, hey, we should stop discrimination. We should stop this racial profiling against Black people. We live in the 21st century, right? So it's stupid. We have to admit, right? So yeah, so if you are active on Twitter, or you're active on social media, or even on YouTube, some of these images would have been quite familiar. We see here, like Agents for Black Lives. So again, this is not a black people, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it's not a black people's issue, but it's just a human issue. And people, regardless from their ethnicity, they are fighting against this issue. Right, so we see here not just regular people, we've got celebrities protesting against police brutality. Alright, so there you go. So this is a Take a Knee, that's Colin Kaepernick, where he refused to stand during the national anthem. And you know, the idea of athletes using their platform or the playing field as a platform to protest regarding a social issue is not new. In fact, you can see it across all sports. And later on, when we study an Australian speech, particularly Stan Grant, for example, he will make a reference to Adam Goodes, an Australian NFL player who did something similar. Alright, so we've got here artists as well. So here's a picture of Beyonce requesting like 1 minute of silence in honor of the victims of police brutality. So she paused the concert, flashed out these names of victims, and just in an effort to raise awareness. Right? So now talking about, aside from athletes, like I said before, artists do use their platforms to convey their politics as well as to raise awareness. Now, Beyonce, like many black artists, uses her platform, her fan base, extensively, and you can see it based on her performance. For instance, this outfit right here that she's wearing is essentially, a reference to this black social group that exists during the civil rights movement in America, which is called the Black Panther, right? So if you think that, hey, Black Panther, that sounds like the movie. Well, you're right. Basically, the Black Panther movie or the cartoon pretty much drew inspiration from this social movement. Right, so you can see here the clothes of these members, the Black Panther members, are quite similar to what Beyonce was trying to convey here. So yeah, so it was founded by Malcolm X. Now he is one may argue that he is a contemporary of Martin Luther King. They're of same side, although their politics and how to fight for equality is a bit different. Okay, so another issue a topic that Jesse Williams touched or referenced is cultural appropriation. So when he said that line, black gold, I'm not sure, black culture. So essentially, society, particularly white society, has cashed in or appropriated black culture because it looked cool. Now, it's not just about black culture. Actually, if you want to understand about cultural appropriation, it happens across any culture as long as you're not white. So, for instance, we see, for example, Katy Perry here being accused for appropriating Asian culture. So, you can see it from her performance right here. I believe this is a fashion show from Gucci, where you can see the top that this model was wearing is something that is considered, a cultural, a sacred cultural garment that is reserved for, I guess, high-ranking officers in the Maharaja's, the emperor's court. Or maybe this is something that what Chinese royalty would probably wear. But so the fact that, it's being mixed matched like this as a fashion item is problematic. So yeah, you can see other examples right here. Right. So Miley Cyrus, she's known to appropriate black culture. Like, you can just check out her music video. The idea of her twerking. Now, twerking, believe it or not, is actually it was derived from an African traditional dance. So it is a cultural thing. It's just that now everyone's doing it. So I guess if you're not black, are you cultural appropriating? So in order to understand cultural appropriation, you have to see that it is actually a very grey issue. Now, if I were to show you this picture, now this is particularly a scene that is very normal here in Malaysia. So my question to you is, if you were to look at this picture, would you accuse all these people, alright, as culture appropriating, or is this a form of cultural appreciation? Now, it's for you to decide really. But to simplify, alright, what differentiates cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation is really about the intent and the purpose, which, if you were to think about it, is very hard to measure, because I can decide to wear a sari. I might be wearing it wrongly, but my intention is to celebrate my best friend's wedding, who happens to be Indian. Now, if you're a person who doesn't know me, you can accuse me as culture appropriating, but in my mind, I'm not culture appropriating, I'm cultural appreciating, right? So yes, it depends on the intent and the purpose, but do know that in real life, this is actually very hard to identify. Next, something a bit more physical, a bit more clearer, is whether that garment or ritual are respected and accurate. Now, so like for example with Katy Perry's performance just now, in the picture, you can see that she mixes elements of different Asian cultures, like you can see a bit of Japanese, a bit of Chinese, a bit of Korean. Now, that's a bit sacrilegious in my opinion, because clearly this woman or this performer has not done her research, and therefore not I guess conveying the accuracy of the said culture that she's referencing from. So that is problematic because it feeds into people's stereotypes. Now, relationship to the culture basically means like it goes back to the purpose as well. Like if you are a biracial person, or if you're Malaysian, in my opinion, like for instance that I'm wearing a sari to go to my best friend's wedding. Say, you see, I have a close relationship with a person of that culture because she's my best friend, so therefore that somehow excuses me. But if I'm a person who's never had an Indian friend before, never bothered to really learn about them, it's just that I just thought sari looks cool, I'll just wear it, and I might be wearing it wrongly, so that might be cultural appropriation. Last one, likely to be biased against white people. Now, what does that mean? Basically that means that and this is a problem, is that what about the idea of often white people are constantly accused of cultural appropriation compared to other people of color. Now think about the example of Nicki Minaj when she published that album called Chun Li, where she was wearing basically Asian garments. Now, there was an article released during that time that basically questioned the public. How come Nicki Minaj did not get the same backlash as Miley Cyrus, for instance? Is it because she's a person of color? So, do understand that while cultural appropriation is a term that protects the sacredness of a culture, but it is also a problematic term as well, because within it, it is also quite biased, particularly in this case, white people. Right, now, for this slide, okay, exploring the trope of the magical black character, I'm going to stop here because this video is getting a bit too long, and I feel that it is better if I make it into a second video. So I'm just going to end it right here. Thank you so much for listening.